see. I bet my brother said I'm the uglier of the twins, right? Yeah. Well, that's not true. You can obviously see who's the handsomest one. So this is, I hear he says this is English with freshmen and sophomores and a couple of seniors, Luisa Aparicio and Alejandra's, oh, wait, no, Alejandra Montes, is that true? Yes. Well, everybody, uh, pay attention because my brother, the ugliest of the two of us, said that you're going to try to read a book called, I think it's written by Sandra Cisneros, right? And she wrote a book called The House on Mango Street. And I hear that you took a look at her biography last week and you found out she wasn't Chinese after all. She was actually Mexican. I heard about that whole thing. That was hilarious. He gave you the answer, right? He gave you the answer? Guess who's the smarter brother, too? Yeah. So he said that this week you're going to be looking at the history of the Mexican population in Chicago, which he said is kind of hard to grasp. But I hear he gave you a paragraph to own. Everybody has a paragraph. Oh yeah, Haven, can you have a seat? Can you find a seat now? Yes, that's great. Thank you for finding your seat. Appreciate that. Good. He told me all about you, Haven. Yeah, he likes you a lot. He just has a you're just having a hard time just finding your right seat. So great. And Christian, are you you're manning the table over there, the manhood table over there? I hope you're doing a great job over there. Great, good, good, good. And my brother told about Bianca, the new student. She's doing great, fantastic, wonderful. I think so. Everybody has a paragraph, and he said that I should read the paragraphs to you, and you can take a look at, especially when your paragraph it comes up, you can take a look at it. I hear he's having you do circle the nouns, which are persons, places, things, or ideas. He keeps saying his or ideas. He keeps reminding you. He tells me. And then you are going to write out all of the definitions. I think you had a start on this. Did he? He made us. He told about this too. He handed out the wrong assignment, so you've done half of it already, which is a great thing on a Monday morning, right? And then so then you have to finish the words. I hear he is allowing you to use your phones. He tells me he's so strict about phones, but what you can he says you can actually use your phones to look up the words, the definitions, or write them beside the word. And then he wants you to find the most important sentence in the paragraph. So listen carefully when your paragraph comes up to listen to the paragraph. And then he says you have to try to summarize the paragraph, which is probably going to be the toughest thing for you to do. So my wife is just coming out. No, it's not my wife. It's my brother's wife. Hello there, Rosalind. Nice to see you. Would you like to come and say hi to the kids? Would you like to come over and say hi? This is a YouTube presentation for my class that I'm having to do. She's kind of embarrassed. She's very embarrassed. She's not sure she wants to come and see us. But here she is. Here's my lovely wife. This is Saturday morning. Oh, no, it's not my wife. It's my brother's wife, Rosalind.
Hello.
Yes, she's I don't know what got into her to marry him because she's so adorable and so wonderful. But that's just sometimes guys just luck out. So let's just read it. Let's read the article. Just listen carefully as I read it and follow along, and especially when your paragraph comes up. It's called The Mexican Population in Chicago. Paragraph 1. According to the 2010 census, two-thirds of the United States Latino population lives in California, Texas, or Arizona. However, the fourth most populous state for Latinos, especially Mexicans, is Illinois. In 1850, the Mexican population of Chicago consisted of a mere 50 people. By 1920, the census reported 1,200 Mexicans living in Chicago. And there were over 1 million and there will be over 1 million by the year 2000. Very interesting. And now we know that's the case because now it's 2018. Today, many Mexican Americans living in Chicago can trace their family's history in the city as far back as the turn of the previous century, which is the 1900s, when I was born, when my brother was born. The period between 1900 and 1925 was full of change for both Mexico and the United States. This is paragraph 2. Mexico is experiencing a time of political unrest and war, so men looking for better wages crossed the American border. In addition, many people found it unsafe to stay in Mexico, so entire families fled the country for the political or religious safety and the freedoms that the United States offered. Paragraph 3. At this time, Chicago's economy was heavily reliant on the railroad, steel, sugar beet, and meatpacking industries. But more workers were needed, sometimes to replace employees on strike or men fighting overseas during World War One. Uh, People going on strike means that they are in unions and they decided, hey, we're not going to work because our wages are so low and our hours are so long, so we're going to not work so that we can negotiate for better wages and less, just more of a reasonable workday. Continuing in paragraph 3, business leaders sent representatives to the Southwest to hire newly arrived Mexican immigrants and transport them north. The recruiters, called engastitos or enganchistas, paid for the new workers railroad fees and meals on the trip to Chicago, with the understanding that the Mexicans' first paychecks would be docked a percentage until the money was compensated. So they took money out of their pockets to pay for their railroad fees and their meals to get them to Chicago. Paragraph 4. They had better paying jobs in the United States, but Mexicans still struggled. Many workers Many worked 10 or more hours per shift, and their meals consisted of small portions of bread or watered down stew if they ate anything at all. Can you imagine that? Eating just watered down stew, like taking a Costco chicken and picking all the meat off of it and then putting the carcass in a boiling water and just drinking the boiling water with the carcass in it. Something like that. Mexican immigrants had difficulty finding reasonably priced housing because many apartment complexes were owned by Europeans who resented the immigrants. Therefore, landlords unfairly raised rent prices for Mexicans, which meant many people lived in the same apartment to be able to afford a roof over their heads. So lots of families lived in one apartment. So they must have had shared beds and floors and tables and everything. Bathrooms, where everything was crowded. With more people in such small places, good health and sanitation was difficult to maintain. Paragraph 5 now. By the early 1920s, American soldiers had returned from war and wanted Mexicans to vacate their jobs and their communities. In Chicago, neighborhoods called colonias or enclaves were informally established to help keep Mexicans together. Some of these areas included Calumet on the near west side of Chicago, the back of the yards area near the stockyards, and Pilsen on the lower west side. These enclaves gave rise to tortilla factories, restaurants, markets, and Spanish language newspapers like El Ideal. I think it's Ideal. El Ideal. The 1930 census reports 20,000 Mexicans, both immigrants and American citizens, living in Chicago, an increase of 600% in just 10 years. Now, paragraph 6. When the Great Depression hit in the United States, that's the time when the stock markets fell and people were just starving and lost their jobs. This is in the 1930s. Mexicans were seen as expendable, and undesirable. That means you could just get them rid of like some garbage. So a nationwide campaign of repatriation began. They wanted to have them go back to Mexico. Mexicans were rounded up and sent back to Mexico, even those who were born in the United States and were American citizens. Those who remained in the country had an even harder time getting jobs and food for their families, and some were hurt or killed because of racial violence. At the end of the campaign, about one third of the Mexican population in the United States had been forced out. Wow, one third. In Chicago, the loss was not as severe, in part because of the involvement of social workers and the work of settlement houses staff who had already been offering assistance to immigrants for decades. This is in Chicago. Paragraph 7. You're hanging there? You hanging in there? You want to take a break? Brother, maybe it's time for you to turn it off and just take a break and ask some questions. Take some questions. Okay, you're back. Paragraph 7. By the late 1930s, Mexicans in Chicago began to take action to protect themselves and each other from the difficulties around them. Mutual aid societies were established in the enclaves, which required members to put a portion of their earnings into a community collection box each month. When a member needed money for a serious problem, like unemployment, for instance, illness, or death, they were given a portion of the money in the community savings to alleviate the issue. That's just really terrific. In addition, Mexicans, especially steelworkers, joined labor unions like the Congress of Industrial Organizations, CIO, to win better wages and working conditions to fight racism they observed in the workplace. Paragraph 8. In 1940, there were 35,000 Mexicans living in or around Chicago. How many years ago was that? Let's see, 2018 minus 1940. That's 60. That's 78 years ago. That's even older than I am, and older than my brother. Where are we? Yes. Um, in 1940, there were 35,000 Mexicans living in or around Chicago, but that was about to change. When Pearl Harbor was bombed in 1941, Mexicans living in the United States joined the military to fight with the Allied forces in World War II. Some illegal immigrants were able to earn their citizenship this way, including Sandra Cisneros' father. However, there were once again thousands of jobs needing to be filled, so the United States government established the Bracero program. Brazo means arm in Spanish, to invite guest workers from Mexico into the United States. Let's go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Huh? These men were each on a 6-month employment contract to work in agriculture in the Southwest and the railroad industry in Chicago and other major cities. The program ran until 1964, when my brother was 11 years old. Paragraph 9. In the meantime, the Mexican American community in Chicago continued to expand. It got bigger and bigger. Some braceros did not return to Mexico when their contracts were up, and they illegally stayed in the country with friends or relatives, taking jobs where they could. Colonias spread to larger areas, and an area near Pilsen called Little Village, or La Villita, became the center of Mexican culture in Chicago and remains so today. Mexican families also moved out of the city to the suburbs, including Joliet, Aurora, to find more space and larger homes. From the 1950s to the 70s, organizations like the Mexican Patriotic Committee, the Chicago Area Project, and a branch of the League of the United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, formed to meet the community, educational and civil rights needs of the 250,000 Mexican Mexican citizens living in the Chicago area in 1970. a number that had increased 500% since 1950. Paragraph 10. In the 1970s, the Chicano movement encouraged strength and pride in the in the Mexican culture in Chicago. Muralists such as Mario Castillo painted reminders of their heritage, from Aztec and Mayan symbols to entertainers, political leaders, and personal family members. I hope my brother shows you some of these murals because they're gorgeous, they're beautiful, they're magnificent. In fact, it'd probably be a good idea if you would take a look at the mural and then figure out the story that this muralist is telling us. Mario Castillo. He's probably telling a story with his mural because murals are like pictures. They kind of have a narrative or a story that you can actually see by just looking at the pictures, the parts of the pictures. Let's see, we're in paragraph 10. Here we go. Mexican Americans also worked in community organizations like the Spanish Coalition for Jobs and the Latino Institute to get the housing, medical coverage, and education they needed for their families. Through these organizations, they were also able to fight unfair employment practices and racial discrimination in the workplace. And we've come to the final paragraph of the article. Paragraph 11. Today, Chicago remains a city where the Mexican culture is showcased and the Mexican Americans feel more empowered. Community service and activist groups work to educate Mexican Americans on the resources and issues that pertain to them. While smaller pride organizations stage citywide celebrations like the Mexican Independence Day Parade down 26th Street every September, Chicago's National Museum of Mexican Art, opened in 1987, has become a major institute for Mexican art and is visited by over 200,000 people every year annually. So I'm hoping my brother also shows you the some of the beautiful paintings and sculptures in the Museum of Mexican Art. Mexican Americans have earned top offices in local, state, and federal governments as representatives of Chicago and the state of Illinois, and they serve the more than 1 million Mexican Americans living in the metropolitan area as of 2010. Wow. It is clear that without Mexican contributions to the city's industries, community, and culture for over a century, Chicago would not be what it is today. So, brother, you're welcome. I hear that the students have to do the 5 questions, and I hear that you might parcel them out to each group. Let's see, what are the questions? Number one, create a graph showing the growth of Mexican population in the greater Chicago area from 1850 to 2010 according to census data. Hey, this is math. Brother, this is unfair. This is mathematics. Okay, so all right. All right, I guess they can handle it. It's not a bad thing to have collaboration between subjects. Number two, what are 3 reasons that Mexicans moved to the United States between 1900 and 1950? I can't remember. I have to think about that. I'll have to go back to the article and think about that. Number 3 describes several ways that the social workers, settlement houses, or activism organizations helped Mexican immigrants and Mexican Americans in Chicago. That's a good one. Number 4, why is it logical that 2/3 of the Mexican American population in the United States lives in Texas, California, and Arizona? That's a pretty easy one. They gave you that. They gave you a lob on that one. That's easy. And number 5, develop 3 research questions you could use to discover more about the Mexican American experience in Chicago or the United States. I'm going to give that to the seniors, Alejandra and Luis, to figure that out and to give that to the class. So, brother, you're welcome. Looking forward to do this again sometime. And kids, I'm signing off. This is Jimmy C for Timmy C. Hasta la vista. Vaya con Dios.